So let's inject some code, some DLL into a remote process. So as I told you in a previous section, we need two things. We need a DLL we want to inject and an injector which will inject that DLL in a remote process. So injector is implemented in this file, inject DLL, and our DLL is actually defined here. So let's take a look at this source code. So this DLL is really simple. It holds a payload, which is a calc.exe, and this payload is not encoded or encrypted anyhow. It's just pure shellcode. It also implements a go function, which is exportable. Okay, and this function, what it does, it really runs this shellcode. Okay, so it allocates a memory buffer. It copies the payload into a new buffer and changes the protection, and then creates a thread with that payload. Okay. Now a DLL main is almost identical with the example we learned about. So with one exception. So maybe if you remember when I told you about DLLs. So DLL is when it is being loaded by a loader, it gets initialized and the loader will at some point call DLL main of that DLL, and based on the situation the DLL can run specific code defined by the developer. With DLL process attach event, it means that this specific code will be run when the process when the library is loaded into a process. Okay, so in this situation our go function gets called, which should result in a payload being run. Okay, that's basically it. Now let's take a look into our injector. So our injector uses find target, which is the very same function as we used in code injection, shellcode injection example. And in the main function, what we do is, so we find the target, which in our case is also notepad.exe, and then we get the address of load library from our local process. So we call getProc address with getModule handle to kernel32.dll, and then we open our target process, so our notepad. Okay, and we get the handle to it. And with that handle, what we do the injection, but we inject the path to our DLL, okay, which is on the disk. So we allocated a remote buffer. We write the in this remote buffer we write the DLL path, like the path to a DLL. Okay, we want to eject, and then we call create a remote thread in a remote process, calling load library with an argument of our path. Okay, so in other words, this will create a thread in Notepad which will run load library and pointing load library to this path, to this DLL. Okay, and that's basically it. For our debugging purposes, I also added some printf, so we can then investigate where this buffer was located, so allocated. So it will return the address of that buffer. Okay, so let's compile these two files. So let's go to RTO, code injection, and DLL. Let's compile a DLL first. So our DLL should be here. Yeah, implant.dll. Okay. Now we can compile our injector. Should be fine as well. We have our injector here. Cool. So let's start our notepad. We can minimize that and let's run our inject dll.exe. So calc has popped up. That's a good sign. Okay, we found our target ID, which is 1864. So let's launch our process hacker and investigate. So notepad is 1864. This is correct. And the remote address, the remote buffer address is this one. So let's open this one and let's find this buffer. 1BD 84 E60, and it's readable writable. So if we double click, we can see our path to our injected implant DLL. Okay, the other thing we can see is, let's go to modules tab, and on the modules tab on the list you can see our DLL. Okay, so double click on it and you can see the path to our DLL, and exports also, it exports the go function. Okay, so this is how you can inject DLL into a remote process, and this is called a classic DLL injection.